are Vineyard.
Somos Viña.
We are Vineyard.
But I found myself in this long season of like, I'm pretty sure God exists.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't know because I guess I actually don't talk to him as much as I used to think that I ought to. And
That feels cold, right?
Yeah. I don't know what to say. But that's where I was. And about a year and a half ago, a number of very small things began to shift. I think one of them was I just started a habit of waking up every day and lighting a candle. Somehow the candle helps. Feels ridiculous, but somehow the candle helps.
Whatever, right.
And at the encouragement of my dad and a spiritual director that I started seeing, kind of like just, I'm looking for help here. It was like I'm in my early 40s, and I feel like I don't know how to relate to Jesus as a person, like a relationship. He's invisible. So how do you relate to an invisible person? And I needed to learn how to pray. And it felt weird, like this is where I'm at.
Yeah.
You know, but I guess so.
Welcome to the We Are Vineyard podcast, conversations to help us grow with Jesus and each other. Today we have part 2 of our special series between Jay Pathak, National Director for Vineyard USA, and Tim Mackie, founder of the BibleProject. Let's listen in.
So all of these things are happening. And then you said something at the beginning, which was a teaser.
Yes.
For now,
Yeah.
which is somewhere in here, the kind of weird, I think I was healed in my back as a kid
totally.
thing is sort of in the history. You're encountering, a whole new way of life with Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm also fascinated in that the academic space you're in can often, and I'm not, please don't hear me saying this negatively, I'm just observing a thing, can knock sort of that vital faith out of people.
Sure.
There's something about the academics, but not always, obviously, when we're sitting here, but it can knock this sense of like wonder, of an inner life with God, connected to church. What we would classically just understand as people that just sort of love and follow Jesus. Something about the space of inquiry and intellect and academia. I don't know, makes them cold or skeptical or sad or frustrated with,
Yeah, oftentimes they're taking a deep dive into complex questions around the Bible and theology and the complexity of the history of the Bible and of the Jesus movement. And there's a lot of complexity. And so being honest about the issues that you discover through academic inquiry into these things surfaces, and the communities where you can talk, learn, trade ideas, be honest about how what you're learning makes you feel. It's hard to find these environments. And so a lot of people who began with a passion for following Jesus find their faith squelched.
Yeah, kind of fall in a hole somewhere in there.
Again, not everybody. Didn't happen to me. But
obviously,
it happened to many of my colleagues through grad school. So there's lots of different reasons for that. But no, so I think I would say that didn't happen to me, but at every step of my education, I was connected to a really healthy church community. Where I was discovering things about myself and then being able to contribute in a way that gave me life and directly connected to what I was learning. So it was kind of like I just never had that struggle until the last couple of years, which was really interesting. So that's fast forwarding. So when I began to transition to do the BibleProject with more and more of my time, when I stepped away from leadership at Door of Hope Church Community, and that was an amazing journey. It was essentially the first kind of 5 years of the church. The first 5 years of most church plants I know of have a lot going on.
A lot of energy.
A lot of energy.
Everybody's doing everything. Right?
Everybody's doing everything.
Yep.
And so I discovered a lot about myself in those years, which is why I stepped away from the word leadership earlier as we were talking.
That. Yep.
And so I think I just learned when it comes to organizational leadership, managing leadership, these are skills and gifts.
Yep.
And it's just not how I'm wired.
Right.
I can contribute to leading something through teaching related to the Bible, but don't ask me to actually run something because it won't run.
Yep.
It will fall apart.
Yep.
And I learned that by being in charge of things that fell apart.
Yeah. Well, and you can prop them up with certain kinds of gifts and momentum.
Totally. Yeah.
But that internal work of getting the right people in the right places in the right order.
Yeah, you got it.
And that can bring joy to people, as it turns out.
Yeah, that's totally right.
But it doesn't to everybody.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, so when I stepped down from leadership at Door of Hope, it was such a rich season that we were there. And so we just were attending the church. But it became clear that I kept getting pulled back into leadership conversations.
Yeah.
And so I think we sensed, and also for kind of where our kids were at, was I think we feel like we need to find a different church community for this next season of parenting and family. And so I attended an Anglican church for about a year. I was ready to go all in. My kids were not.
Okay, there you go. Well, that makes a big difference. Yeah.
They had just a very fledgling one class for all ages thing for kids, which meant most weeks they're sitting through the hour, 15-minute liturgy.
Yep.
And they're 6 and 8. You know, not so much.
Not into it. Yeah.
So that didn't go well. And then we were attending just a church around the corner from our house because it was around the corner from our house.
We can just walk there. Right. Totally.
Yeah, Mennonite church.
Yeah.
And it was actually really a great experience. And then COVID. And then, so we kind of found ourselves a bit high and dry. And that church community just kind of shuttered. Like they didn't have online church.
Right.
It just wasn't a thing. And we hadn't gotten to know very many people yet. And so COVID was, for our family, we kind of just had a small network of relationships with some other families. But something happened in that season where I will just attribute it to, I think because while I was at BibleProject, and it's such a life-giving, fun project for me, it doesn't put me into the lifeblood of a local church community where what I'm learning and teaching is connected to these people as we follow Jesus together in this place. You know, it's a difference. It's a difference. So I get to teach and I get to learn and study a lot, but then speak into microphones and you know, and make videos. But it's not like we're woven into BibleProject isn't my church.
Yeah.
And so there was that, and then I think, Jay, what I can say now is I hadn't cultivated the long-term life habits related to prayer that could really sustain a vital connection to Jesus through my adult years.
Yeah.
I think being a pastor,
it kind of carries you in a certain way, right?
And like I'm praying a lot, I'm depending on God a lot. I'm and like, what do we do? Oh, that family fell apart, and how are we going to help this couple? And that their spouse died, or what? And it's just you're praying a lot, and
I got to teach this week, so I should
teach this week.
This thing.
And so my prayer life was all wrapped around doing this stuff, and the moment nobody was asking me to do that anymore, and I just get to study, and then write and work with creative people, and I pray for the project.
Right.
But I just found...
different.
So it's kind of weird, but I found myself in this long season of like, I'm pretty sure God exists.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't know because I guess I actually don't talk to him as much as I used to or think that I ought to. And
it feels cold. Right.
Yeah. I don't know what to say. Yeah. That's where I was. And about a year and a half ago, just a number of very small things began to shift. I think one of them was I just started a habit of waking up every day and lighting a candle. Somehow the candle helps. Feels ridiculous, but somehow the candle helps.
Whatever, right.
And at the encouragement of my dad and a spiritual director that I started seeing, kind of like just, I'm looking for help here, was like I'm in my early 40s, and I feel like I don't know how to relate to Jesus as a person, like a relationship. He's invisible. So how do you relate to an invisible person? And I needed to learn how to pray. And it felt weird, like, this is where I'm at?
Yeah.
You know? But I guess so.
And that takes guts to have to admit.
Yes. Yeah.
Because you don't want to admit that to yourself.
Yeah.
Or anyone else, for sure.
Totally. And it's not like, I feel so connected to something bigger in the presence of God when my Bible's open and when I'm thinking about learning and thinking about how to communicate what I'm learning. But when it's just like me and God and my life and desires and needs, like that had kind of like the line was...
Here's a gap.
Yeah. So I just started this daily practice of not reading my Bible first thing in the morning, which is a big thing for me because I'd been doing that for 2 decades. And just starting with silence, with my hands open, and just asking God to speak to me in a way that I can feel and hear it and understand. And so I just started doing that every day. And felt like nothing was happening.
Yeah, silence, right?
Yeah, totally. But, parenting has a way of putting you in situations where you're not in control, like I put my parents in. And so I started listening to my boys, and as I'm trying to tune in to how they see the world, I began to pray with them at bedtime and pray with them about the things that they cared about, which was like, so-and-so called me like an idiot today, or so-and-so says I suck at kickball and he won't let me on his team.
Right.
And it's like, so let's pray about that. And there was the season of a few months where it was really, this is so ridiculous, Jay, but this is like, we would pray about something, and then like within the next couple days,
It would change, right?
something would happen for my kids.
Right.
And it was weird because it was like somehow I'm praying with my kids, and they're fully experiencing God as answering their prayers.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here going, is that what's actually happening? Or,
Yeah.
I was all like doubting it.
Yeah, totally. I can see it all. Because you're going, I'm doing this thing over here.
Yeah.
Nothing seems to be happening.
Yeah.
Doing this other thing seems a little silly, frankly.
Yeah.
But there's stuff happening.
Yeah.
Am I projecting that? You do. I mean, you're a bright guy, so you start to do all these things in your own head, torturing yourself. Yeah.
And so I remember the week I just allowed myself to trust and believe that there's actually somebody else on the other end of the line, that they are responding to me and answering my request to speak to me in a way I can understand, but through my kids.
That's right.
And when I could just let myself feel like that's what I was experiencing, it was like, whoa, is that what's possible? Maybe that's how it could work.
Yeah.
And then you could actually feel like you're relating to somebody.
Totally. Maybe this is how that actually, I thought whatever I thought.
Yeah.
But this is how it happens.
Yeah.
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 Huh.
So one big thing was, as here in Portland, which was slower to reopen things after COVID, was we really wanted to engage in the church community for our family. And so we began to pray a lot about that. And we made a list of where do we have the group of friends that we have the most history with that are the most in one place.
Yeah.
So that we're not starting from scratch. And so all roads led to a church community here in Portland that my friend Gerald had helped start called Bridgetown. And so we, made some phone calls, and we were just like, hey, we want to
show up.
We want to show up, and we're going to be there, and we'd love to see you. And so...
So wait, let me make an observation, because you probably wouldn't see this quickly, but it strikes me. You are the BibleProject guy. You have bajillion years of study theologically, Greek and Hebrew. You've helped plant a church. So you have very...
Well,
You have-
Door of Hope it had already started.
Yeah, but
It
you're
was
you're
first
helping.
year.
You're in the middle of the
Yes,
mix, is my
yes.
point.
Yeah,
You're
yeah,
like
yeah,
this,
yeah,
you're not
yeah.
an observer. You're
Yes.
in it.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So you have this wealth of information, knowledge, probably specific thoughts on how things should work, I imagine, if you've been... Okay, so all of that's in the bank. And when you say, hey, we should really figure out how to be in a church, what you didn't say was, what matches the way I think the theological thing should work? What matches the way I think that like church should be? You went the other way around. You said, where are the humans that I feel like I could live my life with? I mean, most people, when they quote unquote church shop, okay, they taste all the Sunday soup,
I see.
right?
Yeah,
so
sure.
they move
Okay.
around and they
Yeah,
go,
interesting.
I like
Yeah.
this worship band. I like that building. Whatever.
Sure. Yep. Yeah.
And it's sort of this scorecard of things. I'm not saying you didn't do any of that.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm sure there's, if they had been completely out to lunch in one of those categories, you'd be out. But what you just said is by far the number one piece of counsel I give anyone thinking about this. That's why it strikes me. And
Yeah,
every time they're
it's
like,
good. Yeah.
what? Especially ministry-minded people, is they're in sort of a machine of thinking. And for me, the relationships and the commitment to one another, within, of course, some broad parameters, is the whole deal.
Yeah. Yes.
Like without that,
Yeah.
it can be the best everything else. And so what?
Yep.
Like these aren't people I'm going to live my life with.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not going to sit in there at their kitchen table. They're not going to sit at my kitchen table. Like I'm not. That's a real problem. But you have all the tools and the thoughts in the world, and you chose to go around it that way. When I say all that to you, does that strike you as like strange?
Well,
I mean, not strange in a bad way.
Yeah.
I mean, I already tipped my hand. I think that's the right way for what it's worth.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I guess it's just where we are at.
Yeah.
And I think given that we had
The hunger of
made
it.
a transition,
Right.
had been at a couple church communities that
Sure.
we were very meaningful for us,
Yeah.
but didn't feel like every member of our family can engage
Can be
here
here, right.
and be cared about. And so
Right.
we were at that point, and then COVID.
Yeah.
So
Your
at this
hungers.
point, this has been multiple years before
Yeah.
we've really felt like we're a part of a church community, and that itself felt weird. Like, man, I didn't mean for this to happen, but it's where we are.
So many people, especially out of COVID.
Yes, totally.
Like the amount of people that are like, I love the Lord. I
yeah,
somehow I just sort of fell out in a weird way.
Yeah.
And it maybe it wasn't the same as you, but the weaknesses or the underdeveloped components of their faith are so present to them.
yes,
They can just see it.
yeah,
And
Jay.
it's embarrassing or it's
Yes.
awkward
Yeah.
or
So during that season, John and I started working on a series of projects. One of them was crawling through the Sermon on the Mount for something that we are still working on. We'll actually start releasing at the end of this year.
Cool.
So I'm like immersed in the Sermon on the Mount, sitting in this room, having really honest conversations with John about life and following Jesus
Yeah.
and the Sermon on the Mount. And like this is in the season where we still weren't a part of a church
Right.
family yet. And I just would all the time just being like, is this just a bunch of nice ideas to me? Like,
right.
I don't have the community where I'm working this out with my family and my life. Like, I can't do this. I can't actually follow Jesus
Yeah.
without a larger circle around me. I won't. I mean, I'll say I am,
Yeah.
and I will in a very select part of my life.
Right.
But will I actually be challenged in loving relationships to get outside my comfort zone and be exposed to people, stories, ways of following Jesus that don't come naturally to me?
Yeah.
And I won't. I can't do that.
Yeah.
We tried it as a family. Like, it didn't work.
Well, yeah, and if it's not going to work for you, you're immersed in the right conversations with the right kind of people in a way that really helps people.
Yep. Yeah.
If that isn't working because I need a community, I'd have a hard time thinking of who else it would work for.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's interesting.
So that church community has been a huge gift to our family. It's also a community that's been on a journey of trying to discover what does historic Christian orthodoxy in a Protestant kind of Anglican liturgical form, but that also is charismatic and open to the presence and gifts of the Spirit. That's where our church is at, pursuing that in a very intentional way. And so I found myself, Jay, having these experiences of God's presence and hearing God speak to me in prayer in ways that I've never had experiences like this before. And the most dramatic form that it took was last summer. I developed a sore throat that turned into a terribly painful swollen throat. And we had left to get on a boat to go camping on the state park island in the San Juan Islands. So that was a terrible camping trip.
Right. You're like, this is.
But I'm waking up and I feel like I can't talk normally. My throat's swollen. So I go to urgent care as soon as we get back on the mainland. And the guy's like, dude, you have a abscess, which just means a huge inflated, swollen set of cells in the back of your throat that's closing your throat. You need to get back to Portland and have surgery. I mean, wow, this is your situation. So I'm like, oh my, and it's excruciating pain. So get back to Portland, get the surgery scheduled. We had to cancel a dinner with some friends from church. And when we told them the reason, they were totally understanding. And then they called back and they were like, we feel like God just told us to come over to your house and pray that you would be healed. So this is not a normal part of my life.
I guess so, yeah.
But I'm just like, sure.
Hard to say no, really.
Yeah, totally. So they came over and prayed for my throat. And so I went to bed that night, woke up the next morning. My throat still hurts like crazy, and the appointment's at 11. And so I was playing Lego with my kids, trying to distract myself from the fact that I'm about to go have sharp instruments poked in the back of my throat to drain this. I mean, it's just, gross. It was really a gross scenario. And I get up to go get my keys and put my shoes on to go. And I don't know what to tell you, Jay. My throat, I felt it. It changed. Like it was swollen, like a third shut. Well, it's a little more gross because all of a sudden it became clear to me there was a bunch of stuff in my mouth.
Wow.
But it didn't hurt. And so I had to go to the bathroom and work that out.
Yeah.
And then I got in the car and went to the doctors. And, they check me in and they're, looking and they're just like, we've got nothing to do here. Like, wow, your body took care of it. And so then I just sat with that, going home and it's just like, I think I was healed.
Yeah.
Why? What was that about?
That's so good. That's so great.
One of my friends at church had invited me to come kind of talk about this rediscovery of prayer in my life at a conference that was happening at our church. And so I felt like I needed to tell the story.
This just happened,
of just my journey with prayer. Not about my throat, but just about my journey with prayer.
Right.
And so I did that. I gave a talk at a conference here that was being held at our church. I gave it once at the conference. Then I gave it a week later just for the people at our church. And there I told the story of my throat. It's kind of one of the things that God surprised me with. And there was a woman who came up to me afterwards. And I had told the story, and she said, I don't know if you've made this connection yet, but she's like, you taught me the Hebrew word for soul, podcasts, you made video about it. It's nephesh. And she said, what you taught me was that the most literal meaning of the Hebrew word nephesh is throat. Because it's, in other words, nephesh is the Hebrew word, literally means throat. It came to be metaphorically a way to refer to the whole person by referring to the most vital part of the body for air to blow in and out. So that's why the verb, the noun is nephesh, but the verb nafash means to breathe. So she said, but it means soul, refers to the whole person. And she said, I think that God healed your nephesh as a sign to show you that he is healing your whole nephesh. And I was like, that's exactly right.
Wow.
That's exactly right. God has been healing my soul. And I just was like, oh my gosh.
Wow.
What was that about? I think that's right. So I really think that's what it was about, Jay. I think I experienced a biblical healing sign
Yeah.
on my body as a way of God communicating to me that he wants to reach out to me in a way I can feel. I've felt it.
Yeah.
And can understand. And there's a whole bunch of other things that go along with that, related to friendships that I've made at the church.
Yeah.
And ways of what God is up to in my life. But it's been a season of spiritual renewal for my whole family. And my kids are engaging Jesus in ways that I couldn't have helped facilitate if it was just me.
Yeah.
But other families, other pastors at church, and it's just, I can't emphasize enough that I could have followed Jesus, kind of.
Right.
But the richness of a healthy church community, it's not perfect,
Sure.
but
It's still humans. Yeah.
but it's what we needed. So that's personally, and the way that's bookended with that story of healing all the way back when I was a kid, and that's just felt like a really precious gift from the last year. And so anyway, it's been a really special year and a half.
This summer, Vineyard USA is hosting our national conference, Making All Things New, at Ridgecrest Conference Center just outside of Asheville, North Carolina, from Monday, July 31st to Thursday, August 3rd. We're creating an experience that'll be great for the entire family, adults, teenagers, and kids, as we focus on evangelism, church planting, and global missions. Registration opens to the public on February 8th with early bird pricing, so make sure to check out vineyardusa.org to learn more and register today. See you on the mountain.
Well, and you know enough about our tribe to know
Yeah, totally.
that stuff gets us excited.
Yeah, well, I was actually I was excited to know that we would have time to linger.
Right.
And because you told me that's what this conversation was going to be
Yeah,
about. And
yeah.
so I was excited to be able to share all this with you.
Oh, man.
Because we haven't talked about this.
No.
As we've gotten to know each other, we
Yeah.
tend to talk about other stuff.
Yeah, we got things we're trying to do. Yeah. But I've heard, I saw that talk. I probably had 50 people write me and say, "Did you see this thing that Tim's talking about?" And I remember being here with you when we were filming for the other thing and feeling really led to pray for you. And with Caleb, like, man, this is an incredible guy. And I can just see the Holy Spirit moving toward him in a very, like, almost physical way. I remember, I don't know if you remember, but I remember saying, like, I think there's something about to happen for you. So, of course, I didn't tell anybody that.
Yeah.
But then some of my friends are like, "Oh, you did this thing with Tim.
Yeah.
Did you see this thing he's telling?" So I've been deeply encouraged. And then I'm here to be at your church.
Yes.
I'll be teaching tomorrow night on the Holy Spirit,
Yes.
which is kind of fun.
Yeah,
and,
totally.
And the next night.
Yeah.
At Sunday services. So like if you were to tell, so I want you to imagine you're talking to, Tim, who's like, I don't know what I'm doing right now. Like, I feel cold, frozen, confused. I don't know how to be connected to community. I mean, there's the way you described the sort of confluence of experiences and events, and the fact that your mind works really well. I do love the Bible. So the story isn't, and I found myself doing cocaine. And,
Yeah, sure.
Like it isn't like...
Yeah. Or just whatever, playing video games and ditch the Jesus thing.
Yeah, you're not like devastated.
No.
But there's something not right.
Yeah, something missing.
Yeah, so say about, what would you want to say to, I mean, if you could even talk to yourself.
Yeah, I don't know. Part of it is that I don't feel like I did anything. I feel like something happened to me that I wished would happen and thought could maybe happen, but probably it's not the way it's going to go. But maybe, so I'll stay open to it.
Yeah.
It was more like that.
Yeah, that's more than, that's not nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, there is something to saying, I mean, you said you did the little things you know how to do. I'm like lighting a candle and sitting awkwardly.
Yeah, totally.
I'm choosing to stay connected to my kids and praying for them because I don't know, I guess that's what they want to do. I'm going to choose to connect with some folks who I think have some kind of life in them that maybe I'll live my life with. Each of those little things, to your point, don't make anything happen.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah, right.
I mean, it's not like, if A plus B equals C. However, that attitude of the heart, the choice to just do something that opens me in some way to a way of life with God, to see that desperation isn't, it's not bad. What I also love when I hear you talking is you're not self-condemning in that. People do that, right?
Yeah.
They start into it like what's wrong with me, or they project it. This whole thing's a joke.
Yeah.
You were more inquisitive. How do I?
I will say, I did fully engage this on a brain level. I began to become aware of patterns in my own thinking where I would be surprised, like, whoa, what's that? Like, whatever mental instinct. Related to all I can say is I'm a child of late modern Western West Coast American secular culture. And I just started to read, of course, in the area of trying to understand what has happened to Western culture, culturally, religiously, politically, economically, to end up with what we have here in the 21st century America. So authors like Charles Taylor, A Secular Age, Tom Holland, Dominion, authors like James K.A. Smith, everything.
Yes, wonderful.
And it's like I began to realize that I really have adopted a lot of secular materialist, when I say not consumerist, although that's true too.
Right.
But materialist, like material reality is the only reality. Not consciously, but subconsciously.
Yes.
And so I really had a bunch of mental habits that were just undermining any like realistic, believable feelings that I could have about my faith.
Yeah.
But I have a really robust historical education in where the Bible came from and like why I think it's reasonable.
Yep.
But I had this almost like a cross currents in my thinking. And so I really have had to read a lot to try and understand the history of modern secularism.
Right.
And reading more in classical theism in church history than ever before. So a big part of this, Jay, and this is important because I know I'm not alone in this, is that I actually had to do some intellectual work that wasn't about apologetics. It was about, is a theistic view of the world actually reasonable?
Reasonable, that's right.
And coherent.
Yes.
And I found myself reading these philosophers, David Bentley Hart, Clark Norris, Edward Feser, and like, I was like, oh my gosh, not only do I want to believe this is true, I think it's actually true.
It's true. Yeah, that's right.
I think it's actually, like it's actually reasonably persuasively true.
Yeah, it gives an account of reality.
Yeah, totally.
Right.
Now, is it uncontestable? Of course not. But what is?
Right.
So that's crucially important. I don't want to say it was all feelings. This
No,
was
that is
all.
important.
But the point is that it was happening in tandem.
Yeah.
And it created the environment, like with my kids, where saying, I think God's answering my kids' prayers wasn't like, but really, that's impossible.
Right.
But to be like,
Right.
no, I think that could actually be more real than anything that I think is real.
Yes.
And that's been another piece. So, it's been a season, middle age, for me and my wife in very different ways, has been a season of deep integration of these parts of
Yeah.
our lives that have felt kind of out of sync.
Yep.
And being a part of a local church, for me, has been really crucial.
Yes.
Absolutely crucial, and in ways that I'm appreciating. I knew already, but I'm
Right.
appreciating in a new way.
Yeah.
And the reality of how our habits, when it comes to prayer and spiritual formation, it truly is about habit formation. And I'm not likely to hear God directing, speaking, leading me if I have zero life habits that will ever open my consciousness to an awareness of that presence. And I just was way out of practice, man. I had a flabby belly when it came to those parts.
Right,
And
right.
so you're right. I guess I did do things, and
Right.
I was after something. But at the same time, what the last year and a half has been like doesn't feel like the result of some technique or
No.
found some practice or something.
Yeah, it can't be.
It just
Right.
it happened to me as much as I happened to it, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. That's super encouraging. Well, and I love the last bit you added there, which is often more academic types that are doubting or curious or frustrated. They'll move towards an apologetic frame first. Fair enough. That can help. But then you're also saying, no, there was some other folks that helped me with a different kind of analysis. And I don't know, sadly, not all pastors are trained in some of those ways of thinking. So they, in my tribes, they'll say things to academic types like, well, let's just pray for you. I mean, maybe we can just blow the dust off this.
Yeah.
Which can help, by the way.
Yes, it
happen.
can. Yes, it can.
But
Yeah.
some of the authors you just described, I've found for my friends are really, really helpful because they are, trained. They're in the academy.
Yes. Yeah.
And they're having these experiences. And, we've had Jamie Smith and different stuff we've done in the Vineyard or these different folks where they have all the credentials and they have all the experiences and they have the analysis of thinking about culture. And this was, we could talk about this some other time, but Wimber's incredible insight when he's teaching at Fuller's, he's going, there's a paradigm problem here. This disabling people from even thinking about a supernatural framework.
Yes, exactly right.
That if we can just sort of chip away at that, we might not knock it over to where someone might even ask, could I place myself in front of God and say, come Holy Spirit? What if he does then? Then that gives more fuel to think and chip away differently and see formation and it's I exactly what you're saying. I see a confluence of a number of things that just put you in a posture to receive.
Yep.
It's not magic.
Yeah. No. It's
But-
not, yeah. Yep.
But it's those are helpful thoughts. There's lots of people I experience in that place.
Yeah. I think that's part of why when my friend at church asked me if I would share about my journey with prayer in front of the church and other people.
Yeah.
It was a moment where I was like, it's being vulnerable in ways that I'm not normally.
Sure.
But I just had this deep sense like, I know I'm not the only person who's somewhere on the similar kind of track.
Yeah.
And so if sharing my experience could be helpful for some other people, especially people in ministry leadership.
Yep.
Because you get a number of years into that career track, and if you're really invested in it and you actually care, these deficiencies in your own character or your own faith journey can become these really embarrassing places that if you don't have a place to talk about them,
Yeah.
they can really fester.
Yep.
So no pun intended with what happened with my throat, but like, I mean, it can be, or just the your ability to explain what it means to be a Christian can so outpace
Yeah.
your actual lived habits
Yes.
and life choices, and then living with that disintegrated life
Yeah.
it's very difficult, and
Yeah.
I have discovered that it's very common.
It's very common, and it is disproportionate, so it gets lopsided.
Yeah.
Plus, you add in there are unique kinds of pains that come from doing church.
Yeah. Yeah.
The thing I'm always talking about with leaders is the death by paper cuts problem.
Yeah.
It might
Yeah.
not be any
Sure.
specific moment, but it's the fairly constant criticism. I'm sure no one ever criticizes the Bible Project. But if you could imagine a world
Yeah.
where people would offer criticism to teaching, I'm sure you guys are so tight it doesn't happen. But to pastors it can,
Yeah. Oh,
week in
yeah.
and week out.
Yes.
Or to watch people walking in and out of church out of something like COVID and friends you lose, betrayals
Yep.
along the way
Yep.
are part and parcel of the work. That's not I did hear
Compromises.
that once. That's right.
Having to make a decision.
Yes.
There's no ideal decision.
Yes.
So you have to live with an okay decision.
Yeah.
But that opens you to criticism, and
Yep.
you're like, I know.
Yeah, I don't think there's a way to do this.
Yeah.
This is the best.
But those types of decisions add up over time too.
They
and
do.
You'd start. It's easy to believe that
yeah.
you're not actually like a healthy person with integrity.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and those
Yeah.
things add up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, it's the accumulation of paper cuts. No one paper cut are you like, I got to go to the hospital. But if I just paper cut you every day for 10 years,
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
you
start to get hurt.
Well, and you start flinching too.
Yeah.
My experience is people start to flinch. The choice you made to be vulnerable is not a choice people take often. Nah, even if I start to grow in something,
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
no thanks.
Yeah.
No thanks. That I know what happens.
Yeah.
When you put yourself in front of people, somebody's going to take a swing at you.
Yeah.
And so you watch pastors get more and more professional, better and better at what they do, but they're lopsided in a way that people can't see. So the kind of work you're describing isn't, and it's also interesting where it comes in your story. It's not at some
Yeah.
falling apart moment. You're kind of at a height of your professional abilities. Like things are working.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
People like what you do. You get decent feedback. It makes it even harder to stop yourself
Sure. Yes.
and say,
Yeah.
yeah, this is all going fine, but something under the hood is rattling here.
Yes. Yeah.
There's some kind of cable loose here. I don't know what. It's still driving, I think, but do I have the courage to allow God to look at that with me and then allow a few folks in with me? And then if I do see some growth, I'm going to have to admit that I haven't been doing great in front of people. That's leadership. Aren't leaders supposed to have it together? So I can't even tell you how much I appreciate your journey and the work you've done with God. And of course, I mean, this is the part where we say the thing that we should mean more than, where you say to God be the glory, but it really is true.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
the way you described it,
Yeah.
that's not just a stereotypical thing to say. He did a great thing for you.
Yeah. In a way, just putting it that way, that really feels like what my adult life journey has been.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like it's all happened to me as
Yeah.
much as I have happened to it. Starting from like going to the skate park.
Yeah.
But even before that,
Right.
like my parents and their bravery and faith and like all of that, it's all happened. And in reality, that is the truth about human existence.
It is.
That it's happening to us and we are happening to it.
Yeah.
And all our tales are kind of the outcome of the partnership
Yes.
of our choices and also things that we could have never determined that are just
Miracles.
part of God's generous grace. in our lives. And sometimes it doesn't feel like grace, and sometimes it does. And that's the journey. So when I think about like my family, and especially the Bible Project, because it's had a successful journey over its 8 years of existing, but not for a second. It's not even a temptation to take any credit for it.
Yeah.
I get it. It's not even a thought that enters my mind because it's so improbable that any of it should have happened.
Yeah.
Much less that you and I would be sitting here on a flying space rock. Much less that I would be following Jesus and any of that. It's so improbable that it's just like, wow, cool, another day doing that.
Amen.
With these people. And so that on good days when I've had a good night's sleep,
Exactly.
my kids haven't woke me up in the middle of the night.
Right. Totally.
That's where I'm able to be and to meet God in prayer at the beginning of the day and celebrate that and go into my day with that mindset those are good days.
Amen. Yeah.
Those are good days.
Well, my commitment is to continue to pray for you.
Thank you, Jay.
I just believe in the work you do. And I mean, it's starting to get a little embarrassing. I bring it up regularly within any of the Vineyard contexts. Like, I think you should just turn to the Bible Project. They have a lot of tools that are really helpful. And why wouldn't you use this instead of that? Like, or why are you trying to make stuff up when we can build off of the great stuff that these guys do?
You know, last time we were together, you talked about how you take certain videos and edit them into shorter chunks.
Yep.
So we're working on an idea.
Okay, good. Okay,
we're working on some ideas.
I'm still doing it, by the way.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
I'm about to jump into an Isaiah series. I'm about to do it again.
Sweet. No, it's good. It's some really good conversations.
Oh, good.
About meeting our different parts of our audience that we want to serve, especially ministry leaders.
Yeah.
How can we make even things that already exist, but remake them so that they are dialed in even more to ministry use?
Yeah.
So thank you for that comment you made.
Oh, yeah.
When we were hanging out last, because we want to experiment with some things.
Well, you're giving me more credit than I deserve. I just told you what I'm doing. I just said, I don't know. And I always felt a little guilty. Like, am I allowed to do this? But
yeah, it's fine.
But yeah,
it's fine. No, it's a good idea.
Yeah. Well, it's been useful, and I could not be more grateful for your work.
Yeah.
I'm very, very grateful.
Yeah.
So
thank you. And Jay, just you inserted yourself into my life in the last year and a half.
It's true.
But it's one of those moments where it's like I am grateful too. Like I have gleaned so much from the conversations and times that we've had together, and your presence in my life, though we don't see each other very often. It's always an experience of generosity and grace, and so I look forward to wherever the friendship goes.
Amen.
Next.
Yeah, no, I'll just keep inserting myself.
Fine. That's fine. Well, now you've made some friends with some of my friends.
It's true. I know. I'm closing in.
We're going. It's
can't
fine.
escape me.
It's great. Yeah.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, it's good to talk with you, Jay.
The We Are Vineyard podcast is a production from the team at Vineyard USA. If you've been enjoying the podcast, here's a few ways you can help us. Leave us a review on the podcast platform of your choice. This helps more people find us. Connect with us online for additional resources. Our website is vineyardusa.org, and we're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at VineyardUSA. Thanks for listening. See you next week.